All right. So we are in here, we being me, I'm in here. I am Jennifer Tardy, and I'm so excited for my very first LinkedIn Live. So let me just make sure you can see me. If you can see me, drop me a note to say hi, that you can hear me. Hey, Andrew, thanks for joining. And Nikki, I appreciate you all. So once you come in, come on in, come on in. And once you come in, just let me know who you are, where you're from, where you're watching today. We have a lot of stuff that we'll be talking about today. So I'm really, really excited. Okay, so for those of you who do not know me, my name is Jennifer Tardy. I am CEO of Jennifer Tardy Consulting. And I tell people that my organization does two things. First, actually, let me pause for a second because I get so distracted by reading all the comments coming up. Thank you all for jumping in and for being a part of this. So let me switch this over real quick. Okay, so so our organization does two things. First, we coach job seekers and we meet them where they are and we help them to navigate their job search. So that's really exciting. And then the second thing that our organization does is we train recruiters. So if there are employers out there that are really looking to implement effective diversity recruitment programs, then that's what we do. So our overall mission is to be able to bring recruiters and job seekers together easily. It seems so difficult, but my overall mission is to make this easy. So, so thank you all for coming on in. I see that we have a lot of comments coming through. Keep those comments coming in. One of the things that I do want to start off saying and acknowledging is Happy Juneteenth. Okay. So if you're also excited about Juneteenth, go ahead and put that in the comments as well, saying Happy Juneteenth. For those of you who may not know about what Juneteenth is all about, it's in reference to the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the enslaved. So keep in mind, we don't say slaves, we say people who were enslaved. And on top of that, the Emancipation Proclamation, which was issued, it did free some enslaved individuals, but it was 2 years later before every person was freed. And so I actually put a post out there today just talking about Juneteenth if you want to know more about it, and how Opal, who is a 93-year-old individual, how she's trying to take this holiday nationally. So I know that more corporations, I've been watching them, more corporations are acknowledging this as a company holiday. So I'm really excited to see that. So I didn't want to start without first acknowledging Juneteenth. Okay. And the next thing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my reason for being here today. There are two things that I wanted to focus on. One is that I do have an upcoming newsletter. So I was just approved through LinkedIn to start my newsletter. And the focus of the newsletter is going to be increased diversity. And so many people, so many organizations, recruiters, employers are coming to me and they're asking me about programs and training. And one of the things that I share with them is that the reason why I'm doing this work today is because when I was leading recruiting teams, I couldn't find this type of diversity training, this type of diversity recruiting training. I found trainings out there that focused on doing these sophisticated Boolean string searches, and that just allowed recruiters to continue to sit behind a computer screen and make these assumptions about people's race and ethnicity. And that's not what true diversity recruiting is all about. And so what I focus on when people come to me, I really focus on what employers must start, stop, and continue in order to help more people to navigate through their hiring process, which is typically baked with bias. Okay, so I want to talk about, so that's related to the newsletter. In this increased diversity newsletter, when I do my first post, you'll see it come out there and then you can subscribe at that time. So nope, I haven't done any posts just yet on this newsletter, but you will see it. And I'm really, really excited about it. And so I'll be posting weekly, and each week I'll also go live where I'm actually talking about what I mentioned or the theme that's in the newsletter. So that's exciting. Two other things that I want to focus on today as well. One is about our upcoming training, and the second is related to frequently asked questions. I have a whole page of questions that people have been asking me related to diversity recruiting, and I want to share some of that information today. I want to answer some of those questions today to kind of kick things off. But before I do both of those, I do want to remind people that today is the last day. If you were not on my Diversity Recruiting Masterclass, the free masterclass that I did on Tuesday, the 16th, this recent Tuesday, then I do have the replay. It's a 90-minute masterclass where I talked about how to implement an effective diversity recruiting program. So if you didn't catch it live, and we had almost 100 people in that live webinar, I was so excited about it. And if you didn't catch that live, then the replay is posted. To find the replay, all you need to do is go to my profile in the featured section, and you'll see the replay there. So these questions that I'll be answering at the end are questions that came out since that overall replay. Okay, so I wanted to let you know that. And I'll be answering those questions. I've talked about the newsletter, which is exciting. And with that newsletter, I'm going to do a challenge. It's a recruiter challenge, but I'll let you know more about that. So let's switch gears for a second. A lot of people have been asking me, what is this upcoming Diversity Recruiter Bootcamp? All right. And so I want to take a second and just unpack that a little bit so I can get those questions answered. And I'm going to go over to the stream in a second to see if there are any additional questions. But open enrollment is now. It's through Sunday, 11:59 p.m. It'll stay open until that time for anyone who wants to enroll to get trained on how to be an effective diversity recruiter. The program is broken up into 3 offerings. So the first part of the offering is a course, and the course is it has 7 modules, and one of the modules actually teaches foundational concepts around diversity. I share with people all the time that one of the tells that a recruiter is uncomfortable with diversity recruiting is if they have a hard time even knowing what to call people, what to say. So if I don't know if you've ever seen a person stutter when trying to figure out whether to say African American or Black, it happens all the time. And so a part of understanding the foundations of diversity recruiting is understanding the foundation around diversity and finding common language to use. I find that the more comfortable people are in using the right language, the more they're willing to lean in to talk more about diversity recruiting. So the course teaches that, plus the other modules teach how to find more people, how to attract them to your organization. So it's one thing to source, but do you have an organization that's able to attract people who are different than your current population? How to find, attract, how to engage. So this part is all about the interviewing process. And I share with people constantly, most hiring processes, it can be an obstacle course for people trying to get into your company. So your recruiters and sourcers may be doing a great job of finding people. Your company may have a strong brand to attract people, but your hiring process has so much bias baked into it that person can't seem to get through your system. And so we talk about that and how to remove the bias, and then making a selection. And so we talk about how to make an ethical, a fair selection decision, plus how to onboard people. And then the very last module talks a lot about, what I would do differently if I had to do this all over again. If I had to create or implement a diversity recruiting program, what would I do differently? So I talk a lot about that too. So that is just the course. This course is exactly what I would have wanted when I was leading recruiting teams when I was in corporate America. So the second thing that this program offers, is community. We actually have a private LinkedIn group where recruiters from across industries can come together and we can keep the conversation going. It's where you'd be able to find me answering questions there for you. And so the community is really, really important so that I can answer your questions along the way. And the third part of the program, in case you're wondering, is coaching. And so with coaching, we would, for those 7 weeks of this program, we would hop online on a meeting style virtual session where with each module, we'd unpack it together. So we'd unpack it, I'd answer your questions there, and often I'll bring in a guest speaker too. So it is a fully loaded program, course, coaching, community, and it's all to aid in your own development to be a really, really strong recruiter and helping to increase diversity within your organization. So if you have some questions about it and you want to reach out to me through my LinkedIn profile or go to my website and reach out to me there. Okay, so that's enough about that, except don't forget the doors closed. I can't promise. I don't think I'm going to do a launch again this year. I want to, love on my participants a little bit. So I probably won't do another launch, but I just wanted to let you know about that. Okay. Now, so let me just pause for a second. Let's look at some of these comments coming through. Okay, so I see you, Tracy, Terrence. Good to see you on here too. Carlton, hi from Maryland. We have Lynchburg in the house. Happy Juneteenth. Hey, Sheila. Let's see. Good morning from California. Hi, Diana. Perfect. Now, some of you are not connected to me on LinkedIn because I can't see your name. Bonjour, Ray. I appreciate seeing you here. Hey, Bree. I haven't seen you in a long time either. So thank you all for being a part of this too. Okay. So let me switch gears. So going back to what we were talking about earlier related to the Diversity Recruiting Masterclass. Since that masterclass happened, I've gotten a lot of questions, and I wanted to take an opportunity to answer some of those questions on here. And if you find that you have some more questions, drop them into the comments. I'll come in and I'll take those. Okay, so one of the questions as it relates to diversity recruiting, which I like this question, it says, how crucial is diversity at the top level? And my answer is it's absolutely critical to have diversity at the top level. And I hear a lot of people talk about, diversity, but my whole thing is be very specific in what you're talking about. I want to make sure that there's increased representation across, your board of directors, across your senior leadership team, because what happens is without diversity among the senior leadership team, it can create blind spots. And so I'll use me as an example. When I was in corporate America and whenever I was out looking for new opportunities, one of the first things that I would look at, especially at my level, which was leading recruiting teams, the first thing I would look at is what is the diversity among the senior leadership team, because it would let me know just how complex my job would be. So it wasn't just about, is my role in carrying out the work, is that going to be complex? But what was I going to have to deal with politically? So here's an example. If there was a team where it was all white men that were this senior leadership team, they were the ones who were leading and setting the vision, I would know that there may be a gap in perspective. Okay. So there are things related to our perspective because of our lived experiences that are connected to how we identify. And so if everyone on your senior leadership team identifies similarly, odds are you have similar lived experiences, and it may not connect to all of my lived experiences. As I identify as a woman, as a Black woman, and even as a mother, right? And so it's no different than if there was a senior leadership team and none were parents. So there may be a gap in perspective based on those lived experiences. That is why diversity is so important. And I share this in a different frame too. I talk about spectrum of perspective. Spectrum of perspective in and of itself is the reason why increased diversity makes your organization more competitive. And so if you have a team and everyone identifies similarly, but you bring in more people that's unlike how they identify, it increases your spectrum of perspective. I could talk about this stuff all day, but to that question that that a person asked me, how important is diversity at the top level? It's absolutely critical. You're hearing organizations now talk about how they're making it mandatory that more women are on boards, because it's showing that just having women on your board, it is increasing the profitability overall. So anyway, so I wanted to answer that question. Now, another question is, what is the best way to approach questions on diversity? So that question is a little more vague. So it depends on what you're talking about. But if I have to answer it generally, I'll always say be specific about your question. And I always say what you mean. And so instead of just saying diversity in general, if you're talking about Latinas, or if you're talking about people who are differently abled, or if you're talking about these groups in context to senior leadership or supervisors or first line workers, then be very specific. Sometimes we can be so generic or so politically correct that people miss what we're trying to say. They miss the point that we're actually trying to make in the conversation. So I understand that we try to use generic words or surface level language so that we don't offend people. But this is why it's also important to make sure that there's a common baseline of language and words to use within your organization so people feel that they can lean more into conversations. So the best way to approach questions on diversity without me fully knowing the frame of your question is to be clear and to say what you mean. Another question that came through is, what is your recommended next step after diversity recruiting? I was actually having this conversation yesterday with the recruiting leader, and I shared with him that as recruiting leaders, not only must we think about diversity, we must also think about retention as well too. And here's what can happen if you don't. You'll be brought into conversations where recruiting will be seen as the superhero and the villain, right? Recruiting will be used as a scapegoat for all of your employer's issues. And they'll say, and let's say a leader will come to you and will say, hey, we're not seeing enough diversity within our organization, or we're not seeing enough, I don't know, veterans within our organization, or women or people of color within our organization. And if you're really, really smart at looking at the data, you may notice that it's not really a recruiting issue. And if you look at the data, you can see that your team, the candidates that have been hired, they are people of color, veterans, women. You've done your job. And then you're able to isolate the issue to move it forward and say, it's actually a retention issue. The reason why we don't see a high level of diversity within our organization, it's not a recruiting issue, it's a retention issue. And now you can begin to have better conversations. And what do we need to be able to retain people? So whenever I'm asked the question, what's your next recommended step after diversity recruiting? It's really understanding retention. And because I know that recruiting is already enough in and of itself. It's a huge topic in and of itself. But as recruiting leaders, we also have to lean into retention, because if there's an issue and people are leaving as fast as they're coming into your organization, it's going to cause your recruiters to constantly spin their wheels to keep backfilling these positions. And so that's a big issue as well too. Okay. Let me just pause for a second. Is this interesting to you all? Am I boring you yet? Let's see. Tracy, you asked that question. Good. Okay. So so let me know if you're finding this information interesting. Okay. So some companies are using an approach of phase in diversity, starting with entry level and at all levels. So yes, mid-level and senior level people leave. Yeah. Another thing to think about too, Carlton, is that some organizations are saying two issues. Some organizations are saying, we're doing a great job. If you look at our numbers collectively, we're doing an absolutely great job with increasing diversity at our company. But then they're also saying, so I don't know why our employees keep saying that we're not doing a good job. But when you actually look at the data, you begin seeing that, for example, all of your Black people are working in customer service, right? And so recruiters who are trying to do the work to increase diversity, they're like, okay, well, I can see that I can do a good job and I can get people into this department over here, but there's still an issue with that. And so as we begin talking about increasing diversity within an organization, we have to talk about where are people underrepresented and by which groups. And so increasing diversity means that we have to look by business unit, we have to look by level. And so the second thing that I was going to say about this too is that I listened to many employers who will say, we're doing a good job increasing diversity within our organization. We're actually overrepresented with people of color. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're combining all people of color into one group and saying, oh, we're doing a good job. But if your employees are still saying that they're not seeing anyone within the organization, what's good for you to do as a leader looking at this data is to look at it individually. Don't just combine all people of color, but begin looking at representation by, so let's say by Black people and by level, by the Latinx population and by level, by, so whatever populations you're looking at overall, and then looking at diversity from that standpoint as well too. Okay, so I'm jumping all over this page looking at these questions. So let's see. How to begin the process for a company. So here's something that's really, really important that I want everyone to hear me say. And some people probably won't be happy about this, but I'm supposed to say this stuff, is that when people come to me saying, Jennifer, we are ready to implement a diversity recruiting program at our company, one of the first things that I'll ask is, do you have what sort of work has been done within your organization around diversity and inclusion in general? If no work has been done around diversity and inclusion in general, you should not be the leader in this work. Because what's going to happen is you are going to have an uphill battle for a company that has not demonstrated its readiness for increased diversity. Okay? What comes first is the organization readying itself. And you'll see signs of an organization that's readying. I think I just made up the word readying of an organization that's readying itself because maybe there's a diversity and inclusion office. Maybe there's a committee connected to diversity and inclusion. Maybe there's a consultant that's working with your senior leaders or just leaders within your organization on diversity and inclusion. That gives you an idea on your organization's readiness for diversity and their appetite for it. And so when you come in, you already are going to have a lot of work to do around just recruiting in general, but you want to do that under the umbrella of a larger program. All right. And so if someone is coming to me saying, hey, we're ready to do diversity recruiting, and I find out that they don't have the umbrella of diversity and inclusion in general, I'll refer them to one of my trusted peers in the market so they can have a conversation with them first, and then we come in. One of the things that I do on my end is I stay in my lane. My lane is diversity recruiting, and oftentimes employers will say, well, can you help me with these things over here? Nope, I'll refer you over to a peer because I want to go 3 layers deep in this work. There's so much work that's around diversity recruiting in general. Okay, so we have about 4 minutes left. I want to keep this around 30 minutes, but I'll be back next week though. Okay, so I have enough time to answer one more question. Okay. So what are some places? A lot of people ask me about places. Where can I go to source to effectively find more talent? And so there are a lot of places. As a matter of fact, in this program, I have a document that has 86 different ideas, whether they're actual locations or whether they are program ideas. Like one program idea that I like a lot is the Boomerang program. The Boomerang program. So let's say your organization has had a retention issue because they weren't ready or prepared for increased diversity. And now they've done all of this work and they've, cleaned things up and now they are ready and prepared for increased diversity. So a Boomerang program is one in which you go back and you look at your data on who are your high performers, who were your high performers who left your organization. Are they eligible for rehire? If they're eligible for rehire, and you, one of the things that you can do is invite them to come back to your organization. So now you have people who know your organization. They probably love the work that they did. They just didn't like the environment that their work took place in. So being able to invite people to come back into your organization, that's awesome. Another thing to consider doing is an employee migration study. I really, really like the thought of employee migration study or that data, which is where you look at who your talent competitors are. Many organizations talk about, who are my competitors and let me grab talent from those competitors. And those are your obvious competitors. But have you ever done a study that looks at people who are entering your organization? Where are they coming from? People who are leaving your organization, where are they going to? People who are accepting offers into your organization, what other companies were they interviewing with to do the same work? People who are declining offers to work at your organization, what other offers did they engage and which one did they accept? All of those are indications of other organizations and other industries that are talent competitors of yours. And so knowing who your talent competitors are and keeping a database and a list of that, it gives you more places to source. Okay, so that's a great idea as well too. Something else that I've been sharing with a lot of people too is do not underestimate churches. But let me say this in a different way. Especially mega churches. I've run into a lot of mega churches that are now creating career ministries. And so, as churches are helping people, with their finances, of course, with their spiritual life, with their health and things like that, they're also focused on career ministries. And so if there are mega churches in your footprint, being able to connect to their career ministry in order to build that partnership there, because they may have some people that want to come and work at your organization. Okay. So I know you all, it's been 30 minutes and I could talk about this stuff on and on and on, but the good news is I will be back next week. Do me a favor and share this because other people will probably want to have these conversations as well too, around increasing diversity. If you have some topic ideas, some things that you want to talk about, some things that you want to hear about, please do let me know. You can either put it in the comments here, or you can, go to my website, which you see somewhere down here, right there, which is jennifertardy.com. And I'm really excited about this work. I'm excited about this journey that we're all going to take together to learn the real meaning of diversity recruiting. And so I'm excited to do this. I am thankful for your time, and I will see you next week. Take care.